everyone, welcome to this mini podcast. This is running as part of our Talk Money Week series, and this time I am joined by my wonderful friend and colleague Mark, and we are going to be talking all things money and all things friendships. So the link between our money and our friends. Do we talk to our friends about money? If not, why not? So we're going to dive straight in. So Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
A pleasure. Very excited to be here.
Very excited to have you here. So shall we just dive straight in and talk about the way we spend money when we're with our friends? So have you got that one mate who always sort of bows out from getting around? Do you know why that is? Or are all your friends very generous?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely do have that one friend, maybe a couple of friends that do that. And it's a really difficult one, isn't it? I think it's very easy to judge them for it, but I guess a surface level, I think there is probably a reason behind it. And it might be their salary that they're on, it might be that they've perhaps failed to budget this month and they're under pressure. But yeah, I mean, perhaps using my own attitude towards it is a better way to come at this. So I will always be the first to kind of run into the pub or the bar first, because that awkwardness of who's paying, I can't handle it.
Me
so
too.
I will always just say, right, first round on me, let's go. And I know that if I'm going with 4 or 5 mates and we're going in for a few drinks, that everyone will probably get around. But yeah, I do have that friend, and I think it's probably driven by their profession. But at the same time, I would really hope that they'll be able to just talk about it and just say, I'm struggling this month, because then as friends, as great friends, we can just say, no worries, we'll treat you.
Exactly.
And that would just make everything so much easier. But we kind of shelf it, don't we? We shelve it, and it's then a bit uncomfortable.
There's sometimes, I think, a lot of stigma about just putting your hands up and saying, look, I'm just a bit skint this month, or, you know, I've not budgeted very well. And I think I've been the person that tries to avoid that, but then also the person that has just put it all on credit cards to make people think, oh yeah, she's fine. So I don't have to have those awkward conversations and say, actually, you know what, I can't really afford it. But I think that was something that came when I was younger. As I've got older, I've just learned to say, if I haven't got it, I can't spend it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does come with age. And I think there are so many more social pressures earlier on in our life when we're first going into the world of work, going out with friends. Everyone's kind of peacocking about what they're doing, and I think there's this sort of almost this need to hold a front with your friends. But I would certainly say now that I'm in my 30s, that is less and less of a thing.
Yeah, 100%. So have you ever lent money to a friend then, or have you ever lent money and not given it back? If so, what was your approach to getting it back? Did you have to have an awkward conversation?
I've lent money to friends in sort of pretty small amounts, I'd say, but I've never sort of lent a significant sum where I've had to have a proper conversation around it, and I guess how that payback strategy is going to work. But yeah, I've kind of always been paid back, so I've never found myself in that difficult situation. But I think if I did find myself in a situation where a friend was in need, and I think actually probably the pandemic is a great example. So actually, I last July lost my job, a redundancy due to COVID, and I had a really difficult 6 months from July to Christmas of last year, and there were moments where sort of I was going out with friends thinking, I shouldn't be going out for lunch or dinner with my mates. Like, I'm not earning money, or actually I could really do with a payout to get through the next couple of months. And actually, conversely, it was probably me that was having those conversations with friends and family rather than the other way around. But I guess I would only ever lend money to very, very close friends where I could then have that difficult conversation, and I'd happily have it. And I guess maybe that's just more my personality. I would happily say, hey, look, I've given you a 6-month window to pay this back. You haven't paid it back, haven't communicated with me about it. That's not okay. Let's sit down and make a plan for when that money's going to be sent back to me. And I think that's probably I deal with it, but also put a lot of kind of listening and empathy into that and try to understand why, to see if we can work together to make sure that I was paid back.
It's always a tricky one, isn't it? Because I think it is a little bit, you know, part and parcel and swings and roundabout. You get this one, I'll get the next one. That kind of relationship, I think, with friends and money works quite well for a lot of people. But it is when perhaps you lend them a little bit in a difficult time, and that's when it starts to become a bit uncomfortable. But like you say, you know, your personality, you would talk to anyone about anything, Mark. So I can imagine you're quite approachable when it comes to talking to friends.
What about you? Have you ever had any uncomfortable conversations?
Not with friends, with family, yes. A couple of times when we've lent family members money and then it's a bit uncomfortable, either not paid it back or just completely avoided you or made up a reason why. And it just becomes uncomfortable. But I think sometimes you have to have those uncomfortable conversations to scratch the surface and see what is actually going on. So sometimes it's not pleasant, but I think it's always worth it in the end.
And I think in the long run, you'll be a much more admired and respected friend by putting them in a difficult situation initially to unearth the why. And then hopefully you'll get them on the path to better money management in the future.
Fingers crossed. I mean, when we look at our friendship groups, you know, how do you recognise someone that might be struggling, or what have you done if you have experienced a friend who's been struggling? Have you sort of reached out and offered help? We're kind of in a bit of an influential position, aren't we, working for Nudge? I don't know about you, but a lot of my friends seem to think that I've got all the answers to the world of money now. So they seem to approach me about stuff. But what's your experience with that?
It's a really interesting question, and it's a difficult one to answer because I can only answer it really in my own context. I guess what I've learned over the kind of last 12, 13 years that I've been in the working world is, whether it's colleagues or friends, you know when money is on someone's mind, because it's all they seem to be able to mention, and you'll be having conversations about all sorts of different things. And somehow that person that's struggling with money at that given moment in time will always manage to pull it back to that conversation. And I think it's almost a way of saying, I really want to talk about it. I really want to bring it to the table and see if anyone's got any tips, tricks, and advice. But at the same time, they're
I don't know how.
Embarrassed, and don't really know what to do. But I think in those situations, in terms of what I do, you know, I think just listening and really understanding the situation. Empathy is always a real winner, and then just communicating. And it's not just communicating in that moment, it's communicating over a period of time and checking in. It's a bit like, you know, it's a lot like our mental health. You know, we say, how are you? And it's a very flippant comment. But we've now been encouraged through so many different campaigns to say, no, really, how are you?
Yeah, I think that
a deeper level of conversation with people. And for me, the money conversation is exactly the same. We can't just scratch at the surface.
I think just talking about money part of your everyday conversations as a group of collective friends is always quite good. I think, like you say, bringing up tips and tricks or just generally talking about it helps those who are struggling to come forward and say, actually, you know what, I need a little bit of help, or I need a little bit of advice or signposting. I think that massively helps. Do you know what any of your friends make? Has that become a topic of conversation, or is it a bit of a taboo subject for you still?
I'd say it's probably quite taboo, actually. Obviously, you know, very, very open about it with my wife Jenny, and that's probably quite normal. And definitely increasingly open with my family about it, but friends, no. It's interesting, actually. So I work in the sales environments. We're kind of salary and commission, and I find that my friends that also work in sales environments, we're kind of quite happy, because we're in similar professions, to share our base salaries and the additional income through commission and bonus, etc. But those that work in different professions tend to be very coy about what they're on. And you can sometimes gauge through lifestyle, can't you? How well people are doing, and the types of restaurants and you know, holidays, etc., that they're going on. But no, definitely, I would say definitely taboo. And I'm trying to work out whether it's a really good thing or a bad thing. And sometimes I think it's really actually just the employer that loses out from having conversations around salary. Whereas actually, I think there's a lot of positives, I guess, from an equal pay perspective in the workplace to talk openly about salary.
I think so as well. I mean, I'd never really talked to my friends about what I was earning until quite recently, because I had a particular goal in mind that I wanted to reach by when I was 30. And then I've had a recent promotion at Nudge, and that was something that then I shared with my friends. I was like really happy I've reached this milestone. And that opened up for another one of my friends to say, oh, actually, yeah, that's a really good goal to have. And that's the only time we've ever really spoken about salary. But like you say, you can kind of gauge from someone's job role and lifestyle where they're at with stuff, and also their commitments as well. I mean, I think I earn pretty all right money, but we also have a massive commitment of getting married next year. So probably our disposal income might be a lot less than what some people may assume. So I think it's all circumstantial, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. I think you've made some really, really good points there. And I think also the risk of, I guess, guessing what somebody's on or how well somebody is doing by looking at their lifestyle is that lots of us live unaffordable lifestyles, right? You know, we built the budget calculator and the budget stories on the Nudge platform for good reason, that we help people understand either their overspend or their underspend. If they do have underspend, could they be investing it in certain things and saving it? Or if they've got overspend, where are they spending too much? And you know, it's so interesting talking to friends about how bonuses have been scrapped over the coronavirus pandemic. And they're sort of like, oh God, you know, how am I going to cover my costs? I'm not getting my bonus. And I was sat there thinking, oh my God, like you budget based on
a possibility.
A possibility. Like that in itself is so dangerous. And that's when I thought I'm going to have to share the budget calculator with them.
Talk them through it.
Give them some small tips and tricks. But I think you know, we do assume perhaps a little too much just how well people are doing, and I think that's the great thing about I guess the Nudge solution. The great thing about this topic of financial well-being is it's not just about the salary and the bonus and whatever else you pay your employees or what we earn. It's what we choose to do with that money.
Yeah.
And how we protect that money and how we live within our means. And I think that is where a lot of people go wrong.
I was sort of challenging attitudes to social norms with one of my friends the other day, because he said a similar thing. Well, I know full well they earn X, Y, Z. Why have they never got any money to go out? And I was like, you don't know if they've perhaps had to make some financial decisions during the pandemic and, you know, they didn't have an emergency fund, whether now their salary is being spent paying off debt, or whether they're just choosing to use that money to put into their emergency fund, and that's why they're not. And I was like, you've always got to think about what someone else could be going through. So I think that's a massive part of it. And I was going to ask you then, you know, what about the people that seemingly on the surface are always going out and having a good time? And I think there's two sides to that, isn't there? There's one side, yes, you could think, how are they affording that? But the second thing is, you've no idea what they've adapted their budget. They could be cutting back in other ways to afford to go out or whatever.
Totally. And I think we all have different drivers for money, right? You know, some of us like to borrow money away for a rainy day, and we've got a real kind of like mid to long term savings mindset. Whereas the rest of us are like, right, I've got X amount of money this month, and that gives me X amount each week. Lots of people don't even bother to do that, but they just go out and they spend it and they have fun. I think there is a lot to be said for that. You know, there's a lot to be said for filling your life with experience and getting out and doing things. But again, it all has to be within the realms of what's affordable based on what we earn. And of course, as you say, like we just don't know people's circumstances. No. So, you know, for example, I have a daughter, Sophia, with her mum, Sally, and I pay 19% of my salary through child maintenance. You know, that's a significant amount of my salary, and I have to budget that every month. And then I'm not getting any younger. So my pension contributions in my 20s were probably around 4 or 5%. But now I know I need to make that a hell of a lot higher if I'm going to reach my retirement goals. So all of a sudden, we're looking at 19%, maybe another 10 to 15% gone. That's 30 or 35% of my salary parked before I've even been paid.
Yeah.
So, you know, we all have have these different costs and things going on in our lives. And I think it's all just about, again, I come back to it time and time again. It's spending within our means.
Yeah, and talking to one another about this kind of stuff. Yeah, just saying, this is what I've got to pay for. This is the situation. You know, it's your friends are your friends for a reason. They're not going to stop being friends with you if you have a couple of occasions where you say, I'm going to bow out of this one. No one's going to fall out with anyone over that. I don't think. I hope not. Anyway.
No, totally.
And I think that is, what is the cost of talking about money? When we don't talk about it, it has a huge impact on our mental well-being. It might not necessarily have a strain on our friendships if we don't go out on a couple of times, but not having those conversations are going to have a overall impact on our mental well-being.
I've never ever seen anything good come from not talking about money.
Nothing.
It's always a bad story.
It is.
And I think that's almost that's an important message. That is okay. So that first conversation, it might be a bit uncomfortable and it might be a bit odd because it is taboo and we're not used to talking about it. But the benefits are so far-reaching when we talk about money. And to your point, I think that is the greatest point. I don't know the statistics of people that lose their lives due to financial stress each year, but I can't imagine they're pretty. No. So we know that financial anxiety impacts so much. It impacts how we feel. It impacts how we perform, how we interact with other people, and obviously, well-being is like a game of dominoes. If one falls down, everything else falls down. So it's so important that we bring that to life. And we have these difficult conversations. And as you've said, it doesn't have to be going into great detail, but sometimes it's just saying to a friend, I'm actually really struggling with my money. Do you have any advice? You don't have to talk about salary. You don't have to talk about any of the detail, but perhaps they've got a great budget calculator, or perhaps they're doing really well and they've got some sort of financial advisor who's happy to spare 30 minutes to do a bit of pro bono work and help a mate out. Who knows? But yeah, it's so healthy to talk. It's so healthy to talk. I'm going to take a leaf out of my own book here and do more talking.
I know, yeah, 100%. I think I was saying to my friends the other day, I was doing these podcasts and that Talk Money Week was a thing, and they were all like, is it? And I was like, it is. Like, we should definitely all sit down, like next time we're out together, and have a little bit of a chat about how everyone's feeling about their money, because we're quite good at talking about our mental health, but none of us ever really are super open about our financial situation. But yeah,
I think mental health has come on so much more, right? I think we've certainly seen with Nudge, this financial wellbeing solution, that the priority certainly for organisations was around physical and mental health as the kind of two key pillars. But I think as that financial wellbeing conversation has evolved, it's become increasingly apparent that financial anxiety is
a very real thing.
It's the second largest contributor to mental health issues behind clinical depression, which is huge, right? So it's this is real. This is real. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about it more, particularly off the back of this pandemic, where money's going to get harder. It's going to get more complicated. It's going to cause a lot more hardship and hassle. So the more that we can talk about it, the more open we can be with it, the better place we will all find ourselves.
Hopefully people feel pretty empowered after this conversation, and is inspired to just have those conversations with friends and kick off those difficult, tough starting points, because it's well worth it in the end. Or even if you're on listening today thinking, you know what, I need to talk to someone about my money, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, whoever it is, this is Talk Money Week, and we shouldn't just be talking about it this week, we should be talking about it every week of the year. So thank you so much, Mark, and we'll speak to you all soon.